things can go wrong if white isn't careful. And we're going to see a gradual evolution as we go from game to game to game to see, in my opinion, the best try for white.
Right.
So let's get right in here. And the characteristic move of the Janowski variation is A6. And it has the feel and flavor of some Queen's Gambit accepted positions, some Slav type positions like the Botvinnik or Moscow, where you're able to grab on C4 and hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that it's got the stamp of approval by the boss, Magnus Carlsen himself. So I feel pretty good about it. And yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I will say that I don't think white should be allowing black to grab on C4. Almost all the professional players these days are playing C takes D5 here. And if you know nothing else about how to play against A6, if you're playing white, that's your note. So knight F3, knight F6, bug F5. And this is what I want to see when I'm playing the Janowski, because you are letting me do what I want. I get to have some fun here now. You go E4, you got your center, okay? Let's get nasty. E5, and for those Botvinnik Slav players out there, this should look familiar. That major difference, though, is that C-pawn is not committed to C6, which is going to give us some more ideas, as we'll see momentarily. So we need to break this pin. This pin is a problem. Only way to really handle this situation is with more aggression. Aggression, we like it. H6, G5.
How many pawn moves this game?
Thematic with the pin. And this is one of those motifs I pointed out in the course that you need to be aware of. There's two ways to defend the F6 knight. Bishop E7 or knight BD7. And it makes a difference which one you're using, because you could misplace a piece if you choose the wrong one. And in this case, knight BD7 is stronger because this bishop actually belongs on B4 to bother that knight. So that's a key. And in the main course, a line was analyzed. E takes F6, Bubba 7, D5 to try to break up the structure, knight C5, grab, and black's doing quite well here. Mm-hmm. Now, in this game, my opponent played a line I'd never seen before. So I am on my own in a 3-minute game, but to put it in perspective, I've used 8 seconds and we're on move 11. So clearly I'm at least comfortable. So,
especially in a 3-minute game.
You're bothering my rook. I'm going to move my rook. I'll live with that. And knight E4. So let's start with how you evaluate this position. What do you think is even happening and going on here?
Well, one of your favorite phrases is dynamic equality. Therefore, this is dynamically equal.
Oh, I'm calling bull shenanigans on that. There's no dynamic equality here at all.
Okay, I'll be more objective. Well, okay, so white did give up a piece, so it's pretty safe to give it back at some stage as long as you're getting some sort of counterplay for it. My thought here... I'm doing my best not to look at the notation as well as I can try to do it on my own.
Yeah, no cheating.
Yeah. Bishop E7 was the first move that came to mind because of the notes you mentioned earlier, and now Bishop B4 doesn't seem to make much sense because there's no knight to pin. Then I would also have... Actually, you really can't force matters Bishop H6. Let's see. 1, 2... It's hard to say. What's weird is that black still feels safe even though everything is kind of like attacked. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, but your first reaction was defensive, bishop e7. I don't like that.
Right.
We need to fix that. Like my first reaction, if I was going to play bishop e7, I would play bishop b4 check first to be like, all right, you're going to play king d1. All right, you're stuck in the middle forever, boss. And then I'm going to go bishop e7.
Gotcha.
Or if you're going to go knight d2, now you fix the problem with too much pressure on f6. So that's why like aggression, I think, is the name of the game here.
All right.
And
knight takes knight.
the engine actually played the move that I wanted to play in the game, but being it was a 3-minute game, I didn't want to overstep my bounds and misevaluate. Okay. But I did evaluate that I had compensation. Knight takes e4 is not what I played in the game, but that's the engine's choice.
Okay.
You give up the lady because you have bishop b7, and for instance, if bishop e2, a normal looking move, check, rook takes d8, and the minor pieces are completely overwhelming. The queen doesn't have any targets. And this is a classic, game of the century type example where the queen can't do anything.
Right.
The main line, this is the engine's first choice, bishop g5, to give the piece back, check. And this is the position where it's like, all right, have fun, you humans. And I mean, this is like a chaos position, but I thrive in these types of positions, so it's interesting.
I love this. Actually, it's really fun to play on the black end. Doesn't seem fun on the white end.
Oh no. But I went with an aggressive move though. I just went with bishop b7. I'm like, all the tension in the world is mine. So let's get to it. And if my opponent went for the move that I evaluated as best, knight takes, we end up check, very important in between move. Queen takes d4.
An obvious mate threat.
Rook d1, but all these nice little in between moves. Grab, 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 with a slightly better ending for black. So yeah. But my opponent made this game interesting. He takes with the b. So, doing a lot of Puzzle Rush lately. An idea, like...
Specifically survival.
Boom. It boomed in my mind immediately as soon as this happened. I'm like, okay, let's undermine and get nasty. He took the queen. And the natural reaction is, oh, okay, I can give a tickle to the rook. But that's a problem. That's a big, big problem. And it jumped out at me immediately as soon as I saw that the potential bishop takes c7 could happen. I'm like, ooh, that would be a classy finish. And nice quick little 15-move game. Yeah. Let's go on to the next Janowski game. And this one, white plays a bit more solid than that one. And then the last game we'll have a real treat. Okay. So very similar. We got the dirty. And my opponent goes a4. And this is a normal reaction a lot of the time because they understand that you want to take on c4 and play b5. But in a lot of Queen's Gambit structures, a4 just simply doesn't belong. Because, say, if he swapped gears and played c takes d5, how are you going to do a minority attack if you can't ever get the pawn on b4, you can't ever play b5? So it limits White's future plans at this point, right, after committing so early to a4. So I would argue that it's not a good move from that. It gives away your first move advantage. Okay. So simply knight f6. And I grab because I have to. And bishop g5.
Interesting question in the chat. After a4, c5 an improved Turash?
Yes, you could definitely go the route with c5, but from a personal standpoint, I will not play that opening as black. Okay. And that's just preference. Honestly, it's not a bad opening at all. It's very solid. And one of my favorite players, Borussia Jakobian, he's made an excellent career out of playing it. But Yeah, no, not for me.
Okay.
So after bishop g5, this is a key moment, and I actually have both of these moves in the aggressive Queen's Gambit decline. C5 or bishop b4 or knight c6, and this is just me feeling adventurous. The main line is knight c6, and the idea is if they play a move like e3, you have knight a5, and it makes it very difficult as a task to get back that c pawn. And that's one of those key developmental motifs that you need to know in these positions. But I went with the other one, but keep that idea in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be back. So bishop b4, queen c2, and c5, worthy of note here. But I decided to, limp back into the other idea. And I get knight a5, overprotecting that c pawn. He's just trying to finish development. And I say, you know what, sir? I formally request your bishop pair in the open position, if you wouldn't mind. And if you capture, you can help with my development in the meantime. I would sincerely appreciate it. My opponent wisely says no. And I'm like, all right.
I insist.
Let's just continue. Press, 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 press. I got a luft for my king for later. I'm still requesting the bishop pair formally. My opponent says no. Okay. Just castling. And now's the time to cash in a bit.
Okay, I was about to say, it feels a little uncomfortable here for black.
So if you let white have forever and build up a big center, yeah,
okay,
it could be an issue. But the thing is, how is he going to recoup that c4 pawn? Normally, the type of maneuver you want to do is knight e5, so the bishop and knight can work together.
Oh, okay. I see.
With the b there, I mean, I still have a pawn in hand for white having better dynamic play for the center. So I'm just going to go, okay, knight takes c3, and then bishop d6. And say to myself, okay, if you retreat with the bishop with a move like bishop g3, I'm going to capture, and you've given yourself a structural deficiency in the long term. I'm looking for an idea like c6, rook b8, b5, and just really try to cement that pawn in the long term. But my opponent did something to tremendously help here. He decided to go ahead and grab. And this is essentially going to be a positional resignation because you fix me.
Mm-hmm.
And now
you got a pawn and healthy structure.
And notice, this is a finesse. I think a lot of players would go d5 here because it feels right. It feels nice. But it ruins some flexibility for the future. There's multiple ways to defend the c pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So let's make the move that's not committal. If we play d5, we'd give him knight e5. And again, we're back to the theme of limiting your opponent's counterplay. We saw it in the last game. We see it again here.
Mm-hmm.
Rook f1. All right, well, my only guy not doing anything is my French B. He seems to get involved in these structures, so he's a problem. Let's get him in the game. E4. And full coordination, we have an advantage on the queen side, so let's press on the queen side. Rook fb8, getting some harmony as we're pushing forward. Rook ab1, and there it is. Moving forward, marching on. Take,
mm-hmm.
Queen b2, and I want to play b4. I want to crash through, but he's observing that square, and I don't appreciate that. So we're just going to simply go knight b3 and shut down that eye. And the knight is a nice bone in the throat piece there. Gotta love it.
So here we have up a pawn, not strictly speaking healthy quite yet because it's backward. You may or may not be able to push it. So I guess the idea is just simply shield him until later in the game. And
I'm not worried about the b5 pawn at all, simply because it's defended by that bishop on d7 and rook on b8.
Okay.
It's more of in any sort of in-game scenario right now, the only in-game scenario I definitely need to avoid is pure bishop versus pure knight with this pawn structure. Because imagine a scenario where the knight's on b4.
Yeah.
And
get back here somehow.
Yeah, my bishop it's like that's what you're trying to avoid in French in games as well. The bad French B versus the good, powerful knight in the closed structure. that endgame I need to avoid, but pretty much any other combination endgame, I'm just winning.
Okay.
So keeping that in mind, I'm happy to trade since I'm up material, but also it's one of those things, don't overgeneralize. I've taught my students in the past, it's like when you're up material, trade down. But it needs to be an extension of that, of understanding certain end games to know what trades you're angling for.
Okay. Be mindful of what transitions you're getting into.
Definitely. So my opponent goes e5, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, because now I go here, and he can't use e5 for his knight. And since my c-pawn is supported, that makes the push of b4 so much easier. So my opponent is being so kind and helping me here. I always appreciate when my opponents do that. And knight d2.
Doesn't...
Go ahead.
Sorry, it feels weird to play d5 because it feels like you're locking in your bishop, but I guess you don't have anything to worry about. Your pawns are actually controlling his. Never mind.
And yeah, the main thing is I have the clear plan of crashing through. b4 is going to be an animal when it happens. And dread it, run from it, but it's here. So b4, and my opponent goes, okay, knight takes.
So you can call me too static.
Take. Take. And rook a2 would win faster. But of course, I'll miss the one movers because I'm so focused on the squeeze and enjoying it so much that I'm like, all right, rook takes b4, beautiful pawn, beautiful. Queen b6, pressing the d pawn. Like, I want harmony at all times with my pieces, so I'll miss the one movers because I'm just trying to squeeze every ounce of goodness out of my position when I have good position. I did miss it the second time, though. No worries. And my opponent resigned.
Okay.
So
I had a knee-jerk reaction here to play bishop b5 at some point to trade. Is that bad to think?
I mean...
pretend rook a2 wasn't even there.
Right. So I understand the point, but is it necessary to trade the bishop? That is the good bishop, but what is his good bishop doing? So should we be using the time to try to trade if, even though it's the good piece, it's not doing anything?
Okay.
It's dangerous in the opening and middle game because it can coordinate to attack our king directly. With this French structure is what we've gotten. The knight, which is normally on f6 in a lot of openings, is not there.
Okay.
That's what makes that bishop so devastating, because imagine a queen and bishop battery causes concessions in the pawn structure because the knight is absent.
Right.
So that theme doesn't exist in this position because he can never coordinate on these squares because of the location of the pawn. So that doesn't give me an urge to try to trade to avoid that. We can keep the tension for the long term.
Thank you.
All right. So our final game that we're going to take a look at tonight. This